Hi, my name's Jerome Starkey. I'm the defence editor at the Sun newspaper, and we're going to talk today about some of the artillery weapons that have been making a real difference in the defence of Ukraine. In the second phase of the war, it moved into what's been described really as an attritional kind of artillery duel, both sides hammering each other with heavy artillery. And of course, the key ingredient is both quantity and range. And for the Ukrainians, what they were crying out for in that stage of the conflict as we moved into spring and summer was more heavy weapons with longer ranges. Now, the weapon I think we've heard the most of, which appears to have had the most significant difference, is the HIMARS system, also sometimes referred to as the MLRS or the GMLRS. These are effectively the same weapons. They are vehicle-mounted rocket launchers. The HIMARS is on a vehicle that has wheels, the MLRS is on a vehicle that has tracks. Both of them fire these guided rockets which have a range of about 40 miles. The same system, the same vehicles can also fire a US-made Army tactical missile system which has a range of some 300 kilometers. Now that's a significant difference, but at the moment the rockets the Ukrainians have can shoot about 40 miles. Now that has been very significant because that's allowed the Ukrainians to fire beyond the front lines, significantly beyond the front lines, to hit Russian ammo dumps, Russian command posts, and disrupt Russian operations from behind the front lines. We've also seen French Caesar artillery guns. Now they came in around the same time. They have a range of about 40 kilometers. It's not quite as long, but I think they played a significant role. We're led to believe they played an important role in Ukraine's recapture of Snake Island, which is only about 20 kilometers off Ukraine's Black Sea coast. You may remember Snake Island, highly iconic, symbolic outcrop of rock, really, no bigger than a city park in the Black Sea, but it was captured by the Russians in the first day of the war, and there's been fierce fighting ever since to try and get it back. It was when Ukraine had those extra artillery guns with the range to easily hit the island, they were effectively able to overpower the Russian forces and force those Russian forces to retreat. Of course, it's not always just a question of range, because you don't always want your gun to be firing at its maximum range at its target, because of course that would limit the places where you can position your gun in order to hit your target. So having a longer range, having an almost 40-kilometer range with those Caesar weapons, of course gave Ukraine a sort of 20-kilometer band along its coast where it could conceal those guns and still hit Snake Island, and that would make it significantly harder for Russian forces to locate the weapons and shoot back. Another weapon that's played an important role in the conflict has been the anti-ship missiles. Now, Ukraine has its own domestically manufactured Neptune anti-ship missiles, and we also know that allies have supplied Harpoon anti-ship missiles. Both of those have played a key part in the conflict. It was the Neptune missiles, crucially in April, that sank the Russian Moskva. That was the missile cruiser, the flagship of Russia's Black Sea fleet, and the fact that it was struck and sunk, an absolutely devastating blow not only to Russian morale but also Russian prestige, that it should lose such a symbolic asset in such a public and undeniable way. The Harpoons have also played a role, perhaps backfilling ammunition, providing Ukraine new capability, and we've seen that in terms of the strikes that they've launched against Snake Island, against smaller Russian vessels, and that's all about pushing Russia's navy off the Black Sea coast, making it harder for them to threaten ports like Odessa, places like Mykolaiv, which have been scenes of fierce fighting. Both sides have artillery, and most of the artillery that the two sides have is dumb munitions. These are unguided guns that lob heavy lumps of brass at each other, explosive shells which are incredibly destructive but ultimately indiscriminate, and it really just comes down to the skill, training and determination of the crews to make sure, or to determine how accurate their guns are. Both sides use very similar weapons. Ukraine's armed forces are modelled on an old Soviet army, and a lot of the equipment they use is Soviet-era, Soviet-manufactured weapons. So in many ways, they're equally matched. The difference is mass. Russia has more guns, and they appear to have, certainly from the Ukrainian soldiers I spoke to when I was out there, there's a feeling that the Russians appear to have an unlimited supply of shells, particularly of these dumb munitions. And that's, from the Ukrainian point of view, that means they're just under constant bombardment. They're getting attacked every day, relentlessly. And when the weapons have similar sort of ranges, Ukraine has a smaller supply of ammunition. Of course, that limits the Ukrainians. It forces them to be much more selective with what they fire at and when they fire at it. They've had to fight more cleverly in order to stay in the fight. Ukraine has made it very clear that they believe what they need to win this war is more and heavier weapons. Now, they have received some of those over this summer. The UK has supplied at least 6 of the GMLRS multiple launch rocket systems, but Ukraine wants many, many more. Russia at the moment appears to show no sign of waning. Putin's onslaught is continuing. Hundreds of soldiers and civilians are dying every day. Ukraine believes they can finish it, but they insist, they're adamant, they need more weapons to do that.